Hi everyone, and welcome to your homework video on nucleic acids. This is a short one, but you should have your 2-3 guided notes packet out in front of you. As we're going through, periodically I will say pause here, do this. My suggestion, pause there, do that thing, because if you try and sort of write and listen, you're going to end up behind. You can always, of course, rewind and listen to it again, but it'll sort of help you out, go through it once, get all the notes you need. So we're going to start with the structure of nucleic acids. So we looked at lipids and carbohydrates, and they only had CHO, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now we're going to get a couple more of our CHOPs in there. So we have just CHOP, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. We got 5 out of 6 in there. So if we look over at our picture on our right-hand side, we see our phosphorus is going to be in that yellow circle. We see that that blue sort of pentagon right there, that's actually a sugar. So we know our sugars are just the small units of carbohydrate, so those are just going to have CHO, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Which if we look at that one, it holds true as well. So the nitrogen actually comes in our base, otherwise known as a nitrogenous base. So there's where we get our phosphorus and our nitrogen from as well. Now the second question asks you for the monomer of nucleic acids. Those are going to be your nucleotides. So again, on a test, if I ask you what's the monomer of a nucleic acid, you're going to write nucleotide. And those are a little easy to remember because nucleic acid, nucleotide, they kind of have the same beginning to them. So the next part of your structure, and you do need to list these, is your phosphate group, your 5-carbon sugar, and your nitrogenous base. Make sure you have all 3 of those down. So I would pause here, make sure you have this down, including next to your nitrogenous base. I do want you to have all 5 of those written down as well. So now your phosphate group, again, we remember, is in that yellow circle, and it's going to be attached to your 5-carbon sugar. Your 5-carbon sugar is sort of your middle molecule. It has phosphate coming off one side, and then it has your nitrogenous base coming off the other. Your nitrogenous bases, you have adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, and uracil. Go ahead and put a star next to thymine and uracil. Thymine is special because thymine is only found in DNA, only in DNA. Uracil is sort of thymine's counterpart in RNA, so that one's found only in RNA. So on a test, if you were asked a question about structure, what I would ask you to be able to do is list the 3 parts of a nucleotide and label a diagram on a nucleotide. So you would have to be able to label sort of the different parts of a nucleotide. And again, slightly different colors, but the same sort of setup here. We have our phosphate group, which is group number 1 in yellow. We have our 5-carbon sugar in that nice coral color. And then we have our nitrogenous base in that green, I think it's a hexagon. 2 types of nucleic acids. I would go ahead and pause here because it does ask you to draw these in. So I would take a minute, pause, draw them in, and then start the video again. So your 2 types. The first one is DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And your second one, RNA, ribonucleic acid. Now we notice that each of them are going to be 5-carbon sugars, and they're numbered in this picture. If you see the little 1 with that dash afterwards, that's a prime sign. So when we talk about things going from 5 to 3 prime, basically that's the notation that you would use. So we see that 4 of our carbons are actually in sort of the ring, and then that 5th one comes off in the functional group on top. It's important to realize that in that middle section that's right at the top, that's an oxygen. That's not a carbon in the actual ring. Now if you notice on your picture on the left-hand side, so on your left, which is of DNA, there's a blue square around the H. And then on the other side, on our RNA picture on the right, we see there's a pink square around the OH. That is your major structural difference between DNA and RNA. DNA is called deoxyribose because it literally has 1 less oxygen. It's missing an oxygen there. So the last thing you need to know is the function, or what job do nucleic acids do. So the major job of nucleic acids is the storage and transfer of genetic information. So why would we need genetic information? Well, genetic information serves 2 pretty big jobs. The first one is that it's used to make proteins. Now proteins is the last organic macromolecule we're going to learn about, but proteins are probably the most important. When you look in the mirror in the morning, what you are looking at is a bunch of proteins, and you are using proteins in your eye to look at your pile of proteins that is yourself. So pretty much everything that is you, more or less, is made up of proteins. So the way that your body knows what to make, how to make it, and where it should go is because of DNA. Your DNA is the instructions for how to make all those proteins. And then the second thing that your nucleic acids acting as your genetic information do is that it gets passed on to offspring. So I have that picture of puppies in the bottom. So they got half from mom, half from dad, same way that you did. And this is how we pass on information from one generation to the next using our DNA. So you should have your entire nucleic acid section filled in. Please rewatch this video if you did not get all of it, so you come in with completed notes.